Hey, it has been a while since I've been on air. Well, to be precise, a month. And that's because so much is going on. The world is going through this phenomenal change, and the change that it is bringing to our individual lives, our professional lives, it's just beyond crazy. And it's affecting people in many different ways: mental health, social well-being, desire to be together, to do things together, to hang out together, and finding yourself in a position where you just can't do too much because either you're in a lockdown or you have to wear a mask, follow the social distancing, and so much more going on. And it's quite stressful, just because the fear, the feeling that we get, how long it's going to go, what's going to happen, all that is happening. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. So if you're tuning in for the first time, and if you've never been on this channel, why haven't you? Well, I'm Sebastian One, the Almost Naked CEO, and you're watching Talk to Me Movement, the premiere episode. And today, for this premiere episode, I have a premiere guest. She's a friend, she's a mentor, she's an inspiration, and she's just an amazing woman. So without much further ado, let me get you the introduction.
Hey everyone, this is Dr. Shelley Plumb, and I am so excited to be on the show Talk to Me Movement. I am incredibly excited to talk about my new book, To Break or Bounce. For those of you that don't know me, I'm not a stranger to adversity. When I was very young, I lost my mother in a car accident, and it was a very devastating thing as I was in the car, and it really set the stage for my life and actually for the book itself. And the book really is a labor of love. For the most part, when you come on the show, you're going to be invited to my therapy, because writing the book was really therapy for me. It goes through such things that a lot of us out there have struggled with: sexual harassment, discrimination, divorce, death of loved ones. There's a lot that will be covered. It was covered in my book, but also will be covered in the show. And, there is a question that is out there that people ask me all the time. Well, Shelley, you are a prior foot and ankle surgeon. You're a prior podiatrist. How did you make the transition to a producer, and how did you do that emotionally, spiritually, and physically? Well, I guess you're going to have to watch the show to find out.
So she'll be here in a second with us, but before that, I just want to read something for you, and that's from her book, To Break or Bounce. So she says, "What is left of a house that has no walls, roof, or belongings? Its foundation?" I think back to Grandma's words: "You're stronger than you know." Our spirit is our foundation. Right here, right now, in the wake of our death, I have two very important questions to ask. Is our emotional safe house built on a foundation of sand or stone? Is our spirit compromised, or is it strong? The answer to these questions is overwhelmingly important, as it will determine our resilience and how we weather the storm. If our foundation is made of sand, our house, who we are, will be built with difficulty. If it is built on a sandy foundation, the structure will be shaky and susceptible to destruction when the storms of stress blow through. But if our foundation is solid, we can build a sturdy mental fortress, able to withstand significant force. Even if the forces are great, we can always rebuild on a foundation that has not faltered. We can rebuild bigger and better than ever before. Stress may have a temporary effect, but all is not lost if our foundations and spirits are resilient. Oh dear God, please lend me strength in spirit. Now, everybody who knows me knows that I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God, but the way she puts it, I still connect to something, and I think that's what possibly she calls God and I call universe. It doesn't matter what we call it, but the idea is That's what Dr. Shelley Plumb is. She is able to connect to you, get through to you, not through just this book, but her friendship, her presence, everything she has to say and do. So, without much further ado, let me show you a little bit more about her, and then we'll bring her in the show. And there you are.
Hello.
Hey, Dr. Shelley Plumb.
Oh my goodness, it's so good to be here with you.
You know what? If I could just never let you go. John's gonna kill me, but I would never let you go.
I wish you were here right in the room with me.
Hey, never say never.
One day for sure.
Okay, for sure. Let this corona go away, and we'll figure that out, right?
Exactly.
So, how have you been?
I have been actually very good. As I know you're aware, I just got back from a vacation, a much needed vacation, because I don't do that very often. And I am fantastic.
And right as you come back, I put you right to work. Get on the camera.
And that is okay. That is okay. Yes, we did a lot of rafting and hiking and all kinds of good stuff. It was fun.
All right. I'm jealous now.
Yeah.
All right. So, first of all, thank you for agreeing to be the premier guest of this show. I have been meaning to do this for a long time. Talk to Me movement, as you know, is very, very special to me. I started this around 8 or 9 years ago with a goal to help people who are struggling with mental health, struggling with different challenges in their life, and don't know how to reach out, struggle with sharing, being vulnerable. And I needed somebody like you with a story like you to actually be the first person to start this show. So I could not have asked for a better guest, better co-host, and better person to be part of the premiere show. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
Well, thank you for having me. I just think, and I told you this before, and I mean it, is that it is a show that is needed because I think we all need a little straight talk now, where there's no hold barred, every we just talk straight.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Shelley Plumb, for those people in the audience who don't know you yet, tell us a little bit more about yourself, who you are, and you're a doctor who doesn't actually see people medically anymore. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yes, I for those of you out there that don't know me, I am originally from Washington State. Adversity came at a very young age for me. I did lose my mother and my grandmother when I was, my mother when I was younger, and I actually ended up going into medicine, even though I was really, my passion was in communications or TV and broadcasting. I did my surgical residency in Philadelphia, and I landed in sunny South Florida, and that's where I am right now. And you know what, there were some things that happened in my life that were not positive, but I say not positive, but they turned out to be a positive because they really have made me who I am today. And there was a deep dark moment in my life when I had resistance in my heart. I'm like, I am meant to do something different, and I decided to pursue my passion to be a producer, and that is what I'm doing now.
And look at you, everything that you touch, you make gold. How
Oh,
great are you? So let's go a little bit back into your backstory, because for people who are just getting to know you first time, uh, I will never say it right, but you were a podiatrist. Is that right?
that is
Did I
correct.
do it right this time? You were a podiatrist, and you were good at what you did. You were a reputable doctor and very well liked, and you. It's not that you didn't like doing what you did,
No,
but there was something missing.
yes.
So tell us a little bit more about the life of being a doctor and why that wasn't really enough.
You know, it's funny because I think initially when I was studying, in podiatry school and all of that, it was challenging. And I am one, I love challenges. I love to conquer them and to do it. And, at first there was the thrill of that. And like I was saying earlier in the show, is that, there was always a little resistance in my heart, though. Something was not quite right. And I was extremely happy back in college when I was actually studying communications, writing promos for the local television station. It made my heart sing. But little ear, people talking in my ears, say, "Oh, medicine is more reputable, profession. Go into medicine." And I did it. I followed it. But I had that resistance, as you know. And it wasn't until, and I'll share it with all of you out there, it wasn't until I had that deep, dark moment in my life when I was going through a divorce that I'm like, you know what? I am worth more. The last time I was truly happy was back when I was doing that. So why not pursue that? And I did.
Right. I want to ask you about the resistance that you talk about. And I think a lot of us go through this. And I actually can say, because I come from a culture where your career, your life is defined by the society, by the parents, not even by your parents. I will say society, because your parents will decide according to what society expect out of your family. So there's a lot of times you end up doing things, career, family, so much more that you don't really want to.
Mhm.
You resist.
Yes.
So I have two questions for you. Number one, I mean, it's amazing. Somebody who's been such a great doctor, did you have that resistance from very beginning? How did you become a doctor in the first place?
You know what? It's interesting. The first part of your question, did I have resistance from the very beginning? I would have to, looking back, I would have to say I had that resistance, quite honestly, as soon as I made the decision to break from my communications major and go out of broadcasting and into medicine. But can I tell you, and maybe some of the people out there can relate to that, that resistance was masked. It was masked as fear. I thought I was scared to go into medicine, fearful that I was, starting something new, and that it wasn't actually resistance. It was actually fear, if that makes any sense. But looking back now, I knew that resistance was from the very beginning.
Right. And when you felt that resistance, and what I find surprising is you already were in communications. You already kind of were already going towards the path that you knew that you wanted for yourself. And then you moved. What convinced you to leave something you were enjoying or you knew you wanted to do? Or were you not sure about communications at that time?
Ah, I love that question. Yeah, and because it really forces me to kind of dive deep into what it is, and I think that for communications, it was what I was meant to do. It was most certainly my passion. So that was not the reason that I left it. And being honest with you and everyone out there, the reason I left it was for one reason. I was incapable. Well, actually, two reasons. I was, number one, incapable of saying no, because I had people talking in my ear telling me, "Oh, this is better," this profession is the better thing for you long term. So I was listening to them, and then I was a people pleaser. I was terrified of upsetting, like, my counselor at school, for example. So my friends, oh, you should go into medicine, you have the you study, you can study for it, that type of thing. But I think that is why I did it, Sebastian, is I was not capable of saying no, and I was terrified of upsetting people.
And I have to ask you then, so if I understand this right, this was not even your family. This was people outside your family kind of dictating what your career would be without you even realizing, just because you didn't want to upset anyone. Am I right?
You are right on with that. Yes. I am blessed to have a supportive family, but I think at the time it was, in college, and I'm sure it's like that where you live as well, is you have a counselor who's in charge of you. And they look at your skill set, and they look at, what your dreams are, that type of thing. And then they make recommendations. And I think I
Right.
had a counselor at the time that was pretty determined. That was kind of a course that I needed to take. But it wasn't just that. I had friends and different teachers who were recommending it as well. And had I
Did
not
you
been influenced by it, I don't know that I would have went that route.
Well, tell me this. Did you have any kind of reaction from the family that, are you sure you want to do this, or why are you changing from communications, or how did it go? Because I'm so confused. Even though I've read the book, I understand a lot of it. But how did it go when you're making a decision from already being in communications and your family knows that, and then you're changing towards medical science? How did the family react? Did they have any kind of do it, don't do it, anything?
My family has always been supportive, and I think thinking back to when it actually happened, I think that they were surprised. I think that they were, especially, I never really in my childhood or anything talked about being a doctor at all. But knowing and me telling them that that is what I was going to do, they supported me. So what, they didn't influence that at all.
And I have to say, in a way, I wish they had, because you would have not. But here's a question:
Sure.
do you regret having chosen medicine?
Absolutely, 150%. I do not regret it.
And,
And
and that's where it gets interesting for me. And I want the audience to understand, you do something that you now know wasn't really your passion. And that's the reason I asked that question.
yes,
I asked that question because people will now assume, if we don't tell them, they're going to assume, oh, so she must have regretted this. And way later in her life, she realized, oh, you know what? I did everything wrong. But that's not how it happened for you, even though it wasn't really what you were passionate about.
yeah.
So how do you feel about it now? And how do you feel about the time you spent as a podiatrist?
You know what? I don't regret going into medicine, because quite honestly, when I look back, it's interesting, because when people see what I've done, going from a podiatrist or a foot and ankle surgeon to a producer, I get one of two responses. I'll be honest with you. I get either, are you crazy? You went through all that training and now you're diving into this. Are you crazy? I get that. And then I get what you were talking about. I get the flip side of that, going, oh, you must really regret not having done that. And honestly,
Right.
on both sides, I don't feel that way. I don't feel that way. I don't regret going through the medical school, because everything I did, I learned things. I learned things about people, about circumstances, about how people treat other people. And there is so many life lessons that I am now bringing to the table with our talk shows and our, production things that we're doing right now, that I could not have done had I not gone through all of that. And so I don't regret it in one bit. And I also, with the medicine part, giving up that, the one thing that I do miss is I miss my patients. And I realize now that that is why I was in it in the beginning, is that I love people. I love talking to people. I love helping people feel better. And that was amazing for me.
Right. Well, thankfully, what you do now also still involves people. And, you are a person, I don't think anybody can not love you. It's just you're so adorable, you're so kind and everything. But this is not about you and me. So in this conversation, what I want to bring now is you have gone through life, you've made some difficult decisions, you've gone through some challenges. You talk about abuse, you talk about losing loved ones and all that. One question that comes to my mind before I go into the book and your story is, there are people out there who are right now at that stage, and especially with what's happening right now with COVID and everything that's happening around. Some people have now missed their graduation ceremony. Some people have missed, weddings are being delayed. Somebody has a milestone year of some event, and so much more is going on that will never happen again, and it's beyond your control. How do you, and we'll get into the book in a second, but how can that moment break you, and how can you bounce despite how you feel having lost one of the most important moments of your life?
You know what? It's interesting because in the book, and I know that you know this, but the entire premise, the book was inspired by the death of my grandmother, who I loved dearly, and I was not there when she died, and it was something that really sparked a lot of internal turmoil with me. And it was interesting when I started writing the book. I wasn't really sure why I was writing it. I just knew that I needed to. I knew, and my hand was, my fingers were just flying over the keys, and I knew that I needed to do that. And as the book started laying out, I realized that a lot of the things that my grandmother over the years had told me were things that we could use to, when adversity comes and rears its ugly head in our life, we can use those things and bounce to the heavens and resist the urge to break. And she taught me so much about strength, resilience, stability, balance, as you know. So it really, those are some really important tools that I think we can all use, right? I mean, to bounce and not break.
Absolutely. And we've got to, I've been told that we've got to take a break, but before we do that, we'll just quickly take a couple of comments. I see people are commenting. So producer, if we can please have the comments. So first one says, Bev says, Bev, oh, she's actually going to be a guest later this week. She says, excited you're here. We are excited to have you here as well, Bev. Wow. High Tech Mother says, I'm loving this conversation. Just woke up. See, how great is she? I think back in that country, I think it's like 3 a.m. or something for her.
Oh my goodness, wow.
She woke up just for you. How good is that, right?
Oh, I love you. Love you.
and you know what? She is one of the people also with a story like that, and she has bounced so many times. So I personally, one day I hope I'll be able to interview her as well. But having said that, and you talked about, we talked about break and bounce. So let's take a real quick break and we'll be right back. And if you're tuning in just right now, this is Talk to Me Movement on Romaniac TV. And I'm Sebastian One, the Almost Naked CEO. And with me is Dr. Shelley Plumb, the banner you see here. As lovely she is, you can see her personality, you can see her laughter, you can see her energy, and that's the person she is. She's the right person to be talking if you're struggling in life. Not that she's a therapist, but the person she is, everything she does and says is a therapy, at least to personally to me. And I would love to welcome her back in the show. And there she is, Dr. Shelley Plumb. So Shelley, we were talking about, to break or bounce. And so when did you decide that you're going to write the book? Was it something you would just like, how did it come about?
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And how it came about is there was the idea came the day that I found out that my grandmother had passed away and that I was not there. Because, and what was ringing through my head is her words. And she had always, we would sit at her kitchen table in the morning before anybody would get up, and we would play cards together, and we would, have some coffee and breakfast, and she would listen to me, and she would listen to all the things that I was doing in school, my adventures, everything. And she would take my hands and she would say, Shelley, you really need to write all this down. You really need to write down how you're feeling, because there may be a day where you can't do that. And I, at the time, ignored it or was too busy to do it. And when she had passed, I realized that I hadn't done any of that. I hadn't written down how I felt about her, or staying with her at her house, with that beautiful apple tree that you know all about. I hadn't written any of that. And I decided right then and there I was going to start the book. And I did.
And I want to take you back to that moment, because in the book, that's how you kind of start the story. And when you realized, High Tech Mother says, sorry, producer, if we can have the comment back up. She says, I'm so sorry to hear. My love to you. Absolutely. When you heard the news, and I, that's the part that connected with me instantly. There was an instant regret about not having met her, not having spent enough time with her. So tell us a little bit about that moment and your relationship with your grandmother, just for the audience to understand why the breaking heart and all that really happened.
She meant the world to me. And the reason is that I personally lost my mother, my biological mother, when I was 7 years old. And I was in a car accident that my mother was in, and she passed away. And my grandmother is the one that came to get us, and she was just so lovely. And we grew up honestly on her property, and playing in the bay and swimming. And she was always incredibly supportive. And even through my mother passing and all of that, she was incredibly supportive. And when I was going through, a divorce, and I was working, and my life balance between my personal and professional, professional life was completely out of whack. And I was really into my work. And I realized now, and when I heard that she had passed, I realized that I had not been there for her because my personal life was put on hold. And that was the deepest regret. And putting that out there in the book is painful for me, but I'm just hoping that people can learn from that pain. And I definitely have turned my life around. I thank her for that. I really do.
Absolutely. In a way, it would be fair to say that she kind of was a second parent to you. She really was the mother, in a way. So when you went through this, and and you talk about it, that it took you a long time to actually get over that regret. And you say in the books at one point that probably you'll never entirely get over it, but you learn to bounce off of that, and use her lessons and energy, because she's taught you a lot in your life, right?
Yes.
So today, when you're following your passion, you are helping people with this book, and you're on a journey. There's so much change you have seen yourself, and you have taken some really radical decisions in your life. How do you feel, or in fact, I would say, how much do you think is it important to actually talk, to say what you're going through, no matter who it is?
Talking is incredibly important. And I will tell you, at the time when my grandmother passed, and luckily I had very supportive stepmother and my father. But it's interesting when you say that. I think of that quote by Pema Chodron. I believe she says something that pain never goes away until it teaches you what you need to know. And that was probably one of the most painful times in my life, but it was there for a reason. And I don't, honestly, as weird as this may sound, but I don't regret the pain because it was teaching me something. It was teaching me that I need to be resilient in life. It was teaching me that I need stability. And that stability is up to no other person but me. It was teaching me, most importantly, that I need balance. That my life was completely out of balance, and it led to a lot of soul searching, and that's something that you find out in the book for sure.
And I'm going to ask you something now that may not be as pleasant, but I know right now you believe that it taught you, the pain was meant to teach you. But in the moment when you were going through that pain, there must have been a moment when you hated it all and you just didn't want it, any of it. How did What was the emotion at that moment when you were struggling and when you were in pain?
It was a flurry of emotion, like a hurricane, really, for the most part. You mentioned hate, and hate is not a word that I use often because it's a very strong word. But at that point in my life, there was a lot of negativity that was thrown around. I didn't like myself. I blamed myself for many different things, all the way from my mother's death, all the way to not being there for my grandmother. It was very, very painful, and I didn't at the time understand what that was trying to teach me. But interestingly, there were certain things that pulled me down and grounded me and said, listen, Shelley, you need that balance, and this is why. And one of those things was my children.
Right. And as you speak of that, as you were saying that, I just kind of felt like when you lost people, you realize that you don't have balance, and you just throwing yourself out there, but not really caring for your relationships and everything. So I want to ask you, now that you have gone through that and you have learned your lesson, and as you said recently to me as well, that I'm still growing, I'm still progressing, I'm still work in progress. So what would you say to somebody else who is going through either some loss or some tragedy, or a mistake or blunder they have committed? I don't know. What would you say to them right now if they're beating themselves up because of what's happening with them? How should they deal with it?
That everyone, myself included, when we go through deep dark moments in our life, it's very personal, and it's very individual. And as you know, I'm not a therapist. I can only tell you what I personally have gone through. And I realized at one point in my life that it was interesting. I'll share it with all of you. I'll put it out there. I remember the deepest, darkest moment in my life. My grandmother had passed. I was going through a divorce, and I was sitting on my bedroom floor with the phone in one hand and an irate emergency room physician screaming at me. My little boy with his angel face was in my other arm, and I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? And you know what? I put the phone down, put my baby in the crib, and I walked to the mirror, Sebastian. And I don't know if you've ever done this before. I walked to the mirror and I looked at myself in the eye, and it was groundbreaking. I told myself right at that moment that you are worth more. You're worth more. You can say no. You don't have to worry about hurting other people's feelings. You need to ask yourself what you want to do. And I get teary-eyed when I think about it. And, right then and there, you asked me what I would recommend to people. If you're going through that, what I did is I took out 2 pieces of paper. On one piece of paper, I wrote down what I was feeling, what was making me feel so bad. And then on the other piece of paper, I wrote down, what can I do about it? What is the solution? There's the problem. What is the solution? And I'll tell you what, that there turned into the business plan for my business. And for all of you out there, it may not be a business that it turns into, and that is okay. But what that did is it gave me something constructive to strive for. It was really a groundbreaking moment in my life.
Absolutely. And as you speak about looking into the mirror, I think it would be fair to say that you found the best friend within yourself.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I'm curious, isn't it, it's just something else to actually walk to the mirror and look at yourself.
Oh my God.
I had never really done that. Have you?
I could say this to you, and this is not to be narcissist, but I love mirrors and I have lots of them. But the reason is not to look at me as in how I look, but mirror is where I have the real conversations. I have the upfront, frank, candid, fearless conversations. I give feedback to myself. I criticize myself. But the biggest thing that happens, and that's the term, that's why I use the term, I find the best friend in the mirror, because I believe if you don't know how to trust yourself, if you don't know how to rely on yourself, there's nobody who is going to ever make you feel secure. You will never feel you're loved enough. You'll never feel you're strong enough unless you believe it. And that's why I absolutely love talking to myself in the mirror when there's a difficult situation. And that's when, when you said that, that's exactly what I thought. Oh my God, that is your best friend.
You know what? I love that. I totally agree, because you saying that, when I remember standing there looking at myself in the eye, it was a little voice popped up inside of my head, and it was tough love. It's like, you need to do this. You need to do this for you so that you can stand. You talked about a solid foundation at the beginning of the show. You need to have a solid foundation, and you need to ramp that life up for sure.
Absolutely. And another thing still continuing on the mirror, another thing that I strongly believe is mirror is one place where you can go and you will not be judged.
Yes.
Because you already know everything about you. You already know. You may have said anything to the world. You may be pretending to be absolutely normal and happy. I remember in your book, you talk about, what the world sees and what you're living might be so starkly different. And people might be seeing this picture perfect life and a happy person, but deep down there's darkness in there. I remember there's something like that in your book. And that's what the mirror does to me. I can go to the mirror, walk into my deep dark place, and not be ashamed of it, not be scared that I will be judged, because this person already knows what's really happening.
There's no hiding that.
What mirror helps you with this, and I'll say the disclaimer again, you and I are not therapists, but this is my experience, and you're sharing that as well, is in the mirror, you're able to have a very honest conversation and say, you know what, now you and I know the reality. Let's now figure out how do we get out of this.
Right.
Just like you said, your problem and the solution pages, same thing. So, you talk about your divorce, you talk about changing careers. Again, there's so much more you have gone through. And I go back to, you were just a child when you lost your mother. That's huge. And you talk in your book about how that laid the foundation of you feeling guilty for everything else, anything that didn't work out or anything that did not happen the way it should have. So I want to ask you from two different angles. One, how did you overcome that feeling? How did you tell yourself that it's not your fault? Number two, anybody else who's going through that, who's blaming themselves, and I do. Even today, I struggle with, my father was taken away from us unnaturally, and it took me a long time to accept that it's not my fault. But how do you tell yourself at least between you and I, if we can tell people, how can you just reassure yourself that you didn't do it, you didn't cause it?
It's interesting because back when my mother passed away, and I realize this now, back then it didn't make a lot of sense to me, or at least, I didn't let on that it did, is there was a certain amount of blame for myself. And as my immature mind kept saying, you know what, this happened and it must have happened because I didn't do something right, or I wasn't good, or, there was a lot that was going on. And that type of thinking, and I realize that now going forward in my life, that type of thinking led to insecurities. It led to problems with my self-esteem,
Right.
and my courage. And that, you see how that kind of cascades, right? Okay, then I go to college and I have my passion that I love. And then all of a sudden somebody's talking in my ear, and because my self-esteem was impacted.
Your confidence is lost. You,
What?
you don't trust yourself, you know?
Right. Exactly. So, you know what? It's tough, and going through all of that, there was a point in my life, in that pivotal moment where I was staring in the mirror, that I realized right then, right there, that type of thinking was not going to serve me. It wasn't, not just me. It wasn't going to just serve me. It wasn't going to serve anyone that I was love, who loved me, or I love them. Because if I am not whole and my foundation is shaky, then how can I possibly help anybody else? I cannot. And I'll tell you that night where I'm looking at my little baby on my arm, there was no question, Sebastian. I had to do something about it. And those 2 pieces of paper changed my life.
Absolutely. So tell me, about your book. Let's go into a little bit about into To Break or Bounce. First of all, I kind of always smile when I say the name, because you say To Break or Bounce, and you love circles, and you can break or bounce off a ball. It just brings a really
And
comedic
my
kind of
necklace, I got my necklace on.
necklace, everything. Exactly. I need to find something to start putting circles around me.
I've already
So
picked out the circles in your background, so we're good.
fair enough. So, and that's it. How did you manage when you wrote the book? It must have been hard. They must have, because writing a memoir, writing a biography is not easy, because either you have to be brutally honest or you don't write one,
Right.
right?
Yes.
And it's not easy. How did you do it?
Um, it was painful. And can I tell you that the book took me a long time to write because of that? And I think you
How
can
long was it?
relate to that, because I know you're writing a book right now. And I actually, it was interesting with each section of the book, I actually had to force myself to sit down. But I knew I
Right.
had to. I knew I had to do it. So I would sit down, and then once though I started writing, I could not stop. And the tears would stream down my face. And at the end, I'd be like, wow, it was such an aha moment. I mean, there were so many aha moments in the book for me, and when I was writing it. So, each section, I think I was not looking forward to the pain that I knew I had to face. I had to look in my own personal mirror. But once
Right.
I did it and addressed it, oh my gosh, it was therapeutic for me.
Absolutely. So, where can people get a copy of your book?
Oh, you know what? The best place, probably, it is on sale at Target and Walmart. Probably the most popular place is Amazon.com. It's To Break or Bounce, Dr. Shelley Plumb. That's what people out there can search for. And if anybody out there, wants a signed copy, you know what? They can let you know, and I can maybe get them a copy. I'll sign it for them.
Perfect. And also, I believe they can log on to drshelleyplum.com. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely.
They can log on to drshelleyplum.com, find out a lot more about Shelley. And I recommend connecting with Shelley, because if you don't have a friend, she's the one to go to because she is amazing. She's everybody's friend. Don't interrupt her schedule. But what I mean to say is that, the kind of person you are, the personality you have, the energy you have, I think anybody I know with you in common is all praise for you, is all grateful to have you as a friend. And, thank you for being who you are, really. You absolutely are an incredible gift to this world.
Well, I thank you so much for that. And I feel honestly the same way about you. And just like back when I was seeing patients, I love people. And I still have that desire deep within me to help. And I would love to hear from each and every one of you that is out there tonight. I would love that.
Absolutely. So now it's time to wrap up, and I just want to ask you before we go, what's one message you have, especially for women out there, whether it's a career change, whether it's a big decision, whether it's something, it's a bad relationship they want to get out, anything like that. What would you say to a woman out there when it comes to a situation when she needs to decide to break or bounce?
It's interesting. I think if first and foremost, if any of you out there are feeling that resistance in your heart, do what Sebastian and I were talking about. It seems so simple, but it's really life changing. Is to walk to that mirror, look yourself, not at your chin, not at your ears, but look yourself directly in the eye, and tell yourself you are worth more. And then I have an acronym called ramp up your life. And we do that by being, B-E, just be. What are you going to be? You're going to be resilient. That's the R. You're going to be amazing to yourself and to other people. That's the A. M is meticulous. Meticulous in getting towards your goal. Identify, get your 2 pieces of paper out and identify what your goal is and be meticulous in getting there. And then P. The P is power. Be powerful, because each and every one of you out there has that power, that spark in your heart that honestly can make a difference in the world. And we all need that, don't we, Sebastian?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love that ramp, and I'm going to remember that. And I have an acronym of my own, so we'll get into that in another time. But thank you so much for taking the time. Every single conversation with you is absolutely empowering and enlightening, and I am so grateful to have you as a guest, as a friend, and you are a Dramaniac influencer. So there we go.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you very much, and your team. You have a great, beautiful team.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We will see you in the green room in a second, so please don't go anywhere. So guys, that was Dr. Shelley Plumb, and this was the premiere episode of Talk to Me Movement. The entire idea is to share stories where people have gone through challenges or are going through challenges, how to overcome them, and just to try and empower each other and support each other. And remember one thing, if you're going through something, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to share. It's okay to reach out to somebody and say, I need help, because everybody has something they're going through. Everybody has a challenge that maybe others are not aware about. But when you talk, when you communicate, you not only let it outside your body and mind and free yourself, but you never know who's going to be helpful. You never know how your life is going to turn around, and you never know what you're capable of. And remember, you are worth it. You are worth so much more, as Dr. Shelley Plumb just said. So remember to take care of yourself and, dream big and make it happen, just exactly as we say at Dramaniac TV. We'll see you next time. Until next, take care.
Oh, well.